If you can see it, you can be it, meaning role models matter. Ashley Okwuosa is TVO's diversity and inclusion reporter, and she's been writing a profile of Black women finding the inspiration to run for political office. And she joins us now from the provincial capital for more. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Jan. How are you?
Not too bad. So how important is it to have a relatable role model inspiring the way?
You know, I spoke to Dr. Jean Augustine, who told me that when she was first asked to enter politics, and she was asked a lot by a lot of people, she was very hesitant for multiple reasons. Politics didn't really seem like a desirable place for, for Black women at the time, and there weren't really a lot of Black women in politics. So, Dr. Augustine, who was active in the community before she even became an elected official, told me that community members were even telling her, why would you run? Do you see anyone that looks like you there? So her experience was interesting because I think that lack of representation could have influenced her not to run. Thank goodness it didn't. But also for voters, that lack of representation was them saying, well, if we don't have people that look like us there, maybe the issues that are important to us are not being, heard or represented.
Now, in your reporting, you spoke about a couple of women who were cited as role models, including Jean Augustine, of course, that we saw a photo there, an archival photo there. What is sort of the conversation about Jean Augustine and her inspiration to women who are looking to get into politics?
Yeah, I think that almost everyone that I spoke to referenced her as an inspiration to them. The story starts with Amber Morley, who saw Jean Augustine serving as an MP for, Etobicoke Lakeshore in Toronto. That's Amber's own district when she was much younger. Years later, Amber would run for city councillor to represent Etobicoke Lakeshore. And I will say that Amber's journey to politics is entirely her own, and it's kind of born out of her own experience advocating for youth services in her community for a number of years. But I do know that impact of seeing another woman in office and feeling validated by that and knowing that because they're there, you also can do that too. And that's really the experience a lot of women told me they had because they had seen Dr. Augustine.
All right, so I want to talk about another trailblazer, Zanena Conde. This is a photo of her when she was in politics from 1990 to 1994. What was her political experience like?
Yeah, I learned a lot about her political experience from interviews she'd given, one in particular that she did with Steve Paikin, where she talked about her disappointment with how things turned out in the legislature. She was the first Black woman to be elected as MP in Ontario. And at the time, it was just her and Alvin Curling who were the only Black members of the Ontario legislature. And she talked openly about the preoccupation the media and her colleagues had with her in terms of people making comments about her car, her dressing, things that had absolutely nothing to do with the political work that she was trying to do. And I think that being one of the only Black women in this space, or the only Black woman in this space, comes with a heightened visibility that can be distracting. So you have people who are putting their opinions on who they think you should be, on you. In the interview with Steve Paikin, Zanena Conde actually spoke about how prepared she was. She had read everything that needed to be read. She was there ready to do the work. And the focus of the conversations that people were having around her weren't really what she thought they would be.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about sort of the balance there of risk and reward here. Why is it important for Black women to pursue political positions?
Yeah, I think that, it's important to have Black women in many spaces, as they can be. But what I did hear from a lot of Black women that were in office is, they're bringing their entire selves, they're bringing their lived experiences, their insight to the decisions that they're making about policy. And Lori May Lindo, who's also part of the Ontario NDP Black Caucus, told me that as a result of the caucus, there's really a space for her to be addressing anti-Black racism as part of what she does. So they're thinking about how policies will affect racialized communities when it comes from everything to housing, healthcare, and education. Councillor Kemi Akapo, who's a city councillor in Peterborough, told me that, politicians are obviously thinking a lot about how will decisions affect the budget, but it was really important for her to think about the social impact of decisions that politicians are making. So yeah, I think that full experience that Black women do bring is really, really important.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the intersectionality of being not only Black, but also a woman. Jill Andrew, the MPP for Toronto St. Paul, you talked to her, and she brought up the term misogynoir. Help me sort of understand that. What does she mean by that?
Yeah, a misogynoir is a term that was coined by an African-American scholar named Moya Bailey, and it's been described as really a combination of racism and misogyny. Women face misogyny, but it usually can be different for Black women because you're experiencing racism as well. And misogyny can be reflected in the stereotypes about Black women that have persisted for so long. For example, a Black woman being assertive can be characterized as being an angry Black woman, or there's the expectation that Black women can endure almost dehumanizing physical and emotional experiences, but are praised as strong or seen as being able to handle that because they are the strong Black women. So those are just a few of the ways in which your race and gender can really intersect and shape your experience.
Now, it's one thing to run for office. In most situations, a lot of these candidates are recruited, and there's a whole other experience once you finally get there. You did talk to some of the women about sort of what that actual work atmosphere was like. What did they have to say?
Yeah, Laura May Lindo talked about, looking at the Speaker's chair in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, which dates from about 1874, but knowing that Black people were enslaved from 1600 to 1834, and to be sitting in that space as an elected official, there were a lot of emotions associated with that. And I think that a lot of the Black women that I spoke to also recognized that they had a responsibility to represent a community, which is a really, really hard job. Just the Black community in Ontario in itself is incredibly diverse. And I think that that's a large burden. So for a lot of the women that I spoke to, being the first or one of the first in those spaces were titles that they carried with a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of reverence.
Now, we know when we have candidates that are diverse, they tap into communities that are diverse as well. How do voters respond to Black women candidates?
Yeah, in the story, I kind of feature an example where it's a little bit different. We have Kristen Murray, who was running for city councillor in Timmins in 2018. And at the time, she'd lived in Timmins for a while. Timmins, as we know, has a much smaller Black population than Toronto, for example. And I think that she was worried that her race would really play a factor, but it wasn't. She was elected, and I think she said it was because people connected with her because maybe they were looking for something new, someone new to represent them. And I did speak to experts who are saying that people are more likely to vote along their, political party lines or like along their values. So being a Black woman, a Black woman running for office doesn't make her less likely to win because she's Black.
Now, you had mentioned Laura May Lindo, and I want to talk a little bit about sort of the way that the political sphere can be made to be more equitable. And what did she have to share with you about that?
She talked about, how seeing her, because she does a lot of work with high school students who are kind of, after seeing who she is and seeing her in politics, are interested in kind of pursuing that path also. So I think that was something she referenced, being Black and then being in the community and showing people that, because I'm here, you can be here also. But I also spoke to experts like Velma Morgan, who work with Operation Black Vote Canada, and she talked a little bit about the roadblocks, like what's needed to kind of remove these roadblocks so that there are more Black women in politics. Things like funding, a lot of candidates are not coming from legacy families or don't have, large political funding. So she talked about how parties really need to do a lot to make sure that when Black women are entering, the race, like they're well funded, they're well supported so that they feel like they belong here and they can do this work.
Ashley, really great stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.